Pennsylvania is getting tough on drunk drivers. What else is new? It's the biggest revenue-garnering scheme in the Commonwealth. And it could destroy your life. They've raised the limit on blood alcohol content now. It used to be 0.08, now it's 0.10. What's the difference, you ask? Virtually nothing. It just makes it impossible now to go out and have more than a couple drinks when you go out. It's crazy. It's insane. And the price, if you're caught, could put you in jail. It'll cost you approximately between $5,000 and $12,000. That's an estimate from DUI.drivinglaws.org for an incident that is damage-free, that is injury-free. Let me repeat that. $5,000 to $12,000.
Jesus.
Yes.
Steve.
Harrisburg vigorously works to limit access to public transportation. The buses in Pittsburgh, they end at 11. Good luck getting a bus. Need a cab? Good luck there as well. I know people who have waited hours for a cab. In fact, I know my friends once wanted to get a cab, and they couldn't find a cab. They waited for hours. Eventually, they found a cabbie on his lunch break and waited for him to finish lunch in order to get a cab to drive home because it's impossible to get a cab in Pittsburgh. So, what happens? Uber moves in. Lyft moves in. What does the government try to do? They try to shut them down. It's impossible to find your way around in this city late at night. Thank God for Uber and Lyft. Otherwise, you would be screwed. So, you have very little options. And then, the local police, on top of all of this, you can't get home. You have to drink and drive because there's no other alternative. You can't get a cab. The buses don't run. I don't think the T even runs that late, but if you don't live in the South Hills, the T doesn't help you anyways. So what do the police try to do? They try to throw you out. They try to get you to binge drink, gobble down a beer, literally guzzle your beer down. Binge drink. That's the police. They're trying to get you to binge drink as they are shuffling you out of the bar, masquerading as on-duty officers while working as a bouncer under the table. So the police are trying to get you to drink and drive. In fact, they're trying to get you to guzzle your drink so that way you get a quicker buzz, get out on the roads, where now you are a danger to the public because you can't get any public transportation. Can't afford the fees? You go to jail. Drive to work so you can pay the fees that you get, the $5,000 to, what was it again? We have $5,000 to, yes, $12,000. Can't pay that. Go to work to try to pay that off. Guess what? You go to jail again.
It's like
Don't
a bad
worry.
game of Monopoly.
It's like, yeah, it's like a bad game of Monopoly. But don't worry. Don't worry. There is relief. The state is now authorizing more ignition locks for vehicles so that way you can get to work to pay off those fines that you incurred because you drove drunk. But of course, not without profit. Sometimes I think to myself, and I wonder, is Harrisburg run by Ferengi? If you're a Star Trek fan, you know that the Ferengi are a race completely driven by greed and profit. It'll cost at least $800 to over $1,000, up to several $1,000s for this ignition device. So you have to buy it. Or, as always, you go to jail. Welcome to River Talk. My name is Brian Crawford. I'm here in Millvale Studios. We changed the studio around a little bit. It probably doesn't look any different to you, but it's kind of a neat feel to me. And we have an interesting show lined up for you today. We have Matt Gajtka He's going to be here talking sports. He's going to do our Monday sports review. Matt Gajtka, you can hear him every Friday morning right here at riversedgepgh.com, powered by NJL WebTech. Look NJL WebTech up for all of your web servicing needs. They're very good, very affordable. We're going to talk about the Penguins going into Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals, up 2-1. We're going to talk about pooping. And I want you to tweet me at RiverTalkPGH, or you can call the show at 412-407-2PGH. Tell me your most awkward and most interesting pooping moments. We want to hear that right now. Again, 412-407-2PGH. I am Pittsburgh's most interesting man, the most interesting man in the burg, Pittsburgh's moral compass. And we're going to talk about Walmart, actually. And I am going to tell you my thoughts on a new Walmart situation going on in McCandless, and we're going to talk about whether you as a community have the right to pick and choose what stores come into your community. But I want to talk more about driving drunk. So it'll cost you probably over $1,000 for this device. And of course, the state's going to have a cost to issue out those devices. There's payroll to consider, there's postage to consider, and it's going to cost the state around $500,000. However, with the costs that they are going to pass on to the drunk drivers, the accused, and those who are found guilty, it'll bring in $1 million to the state. So, of course, they're going to be bringing in revenue, profit. Maybe Harrisburg is governed by the rules of acquisition rather than the Commonwealth's Constitution. You gotta pay for that guy, that house barber, right? The guy who sits around all day and waits for a house member to come in and get their hair cut, because heaven forbid the house members get their hair cut with the hoi polloi, the commoners.
The plebeian barbers, you can't have that.
Oh, cannot have that. No, not at all. And it's interesting that we're so quick to ruin someone's life for a DUI. And you know what? Driving drunk is a terrible thing. You shouldn't drive drunk. And I'm not advocating driving drunk. In fact, far from it. I think the ignition tests is a good idea to keep people from driving drunk when they have been found guilty of driving drunk through blood tests or sobriety tests or however else they're going to test you, breathalyzer. If you get caught, you get caught. Should it be something that ruins your life, though, for a first offense? My friend got a DUI. It was an interesting situation. He already made it home. He was in his house. He was no longer a danger to anyone on the street. The police pulled him out, gave him a breathalyzer. He got a DUI, and he professes that he believes if it were not for his dad driving him back and forth to work, he would have become a lifelong criminal, because he would have been forced to steal in order to pay for these fines, because he didn't live in the city where you could catch a bus to get to work. So now all of a sudden he's pushed to robbery in order to pay for fines for drunk driving. So then he goes to jail for robbery or not paying the fines or whatever, gets out of jail, can't get a job, so now he goes back into theft again. So you're creating criminals in an attempt to get people to stop drinking and driving. And I'm not saying we should enable them, but why in the hell are the bars open till 2 a.m. if you can't get a bus? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And of course the governor, we want to crack down on drunk drivers, but the doctors selling opioids, causing the heroin epidemic, the doctors are not being held accountable, and in a push to try to tackle the opioid epidemic, the governor has said that he is going to steer clear of doctors for the time being. Heaven forbid they're held accountable. Other states are holding doctors accountable, and doctors in other states are being reprimanded and facing discipline due to careless opioid prescriptions. And it's working, actually. In Kentucky, who has the most rigorous laws the amount of deaths are going down. That can work. Most people who get addicted to these things, they get addicted through prescriptions to start. But heaven forbid we go after the white-collar doctors when we can just bully the drunks for state revenue. Up next, we're going to talk about more drunks, the drunks who will be at the Penguin game coming up, and the other various sporting venues with Matt Gajtka of Gajk's Got Game Friday mornings and DK on Pittsburgh Sports. He's up next here on the River's Edge. Speaking of Matt Gajtka, he's right here.
That's my voice.
That is your voice.
Did a pretty good job with that, didn't we? Yeah, that sounded
worked
all
out
right.
pretty well. So
Almost convincing.
it was very convincing. I know I'm listening.
Oh, wow.
So,
All right. Well,
yes.
I've got you on board.
You've got me on board. That's right. So Speaking of interesting, there's so much going on right now in the world of Pittsburgh sports, and it's probably one of the most exciting. It's probably, honestly, one of the most exciting times I can remember as a Pittsburgh sports fan in growing up, because the Penguins have had success, but the Pirates really haven't until recently, and it's kind of all coming together. The Penguins are obviously in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Pirates are in contention for a wild card spot at this point, and who knows what could happen with the division. But yeah, what do we have coming up?
Well, you said it, really. If you go back 10 years, at this time of the year, it would have been Pirates are playing meaningless baseball games. The Steelers are having their OTAs, their off-season training workouts, and that's about all. But I was joking with you just a moment ago. Get back to me in about a month. We may have less to talk about, but we can get right into it for sure. Stanley Cup Final, Game 4 tonight, Monday night, San Jose, California, SAP Center, 8 p.m. Eastern. By the way, the broadcast is back on NBC, so it'll be on broadcast television the rest of the way, in case you're confused. It bounces back and forth early on. But yesterday, an interesting report from the website I work for, DKPittsburghSports.com, our Josh Yohe, the Penguins beat reporter, saying that Malkin thought the Penguins played soft at times in Game 3, maybe not as soft as the ice at the SAP Center, which was rather torn up.
That was bad, yeah.
It was like a swamp out there, and rare is the playoff series that Consol Energy Center has the better ice, but I think that's the case in the Cup Final. And I think a Botticelli concert might be to blame from the night before. That always compromises the quality of the surface. But I think it played in favor of the Sharks, who wanted to play a more of a chip-and-chase game. The Penguins want to be a faster, not just skating team, but a puck-moving team. And of course, the quality of the ice is important in that type of style. But even though I thought the Sharks gave the Penguins their best shot in Game 3, it still took a bad goal let up by Matt Murray, and also an overtime in which the Penguins dominated, but I thought a pretty lucky shot by Jonas Donskoy to beat Matt Murray, who, again, didn't play it too well. So there you have it. That's what it took for the Sharks to get back in this series. Game 4, it always seems like it's pivotal in a best-of-7. You either have it tied 2-2 or a team goes up 3-1 in most cases. And if the Penguins can take a 3-1 lead back, I like their chances to close it out in 5. I liked them in 5 to begin with. I thought that the Lightning were a better opponent, a better matchup as far as competing with the Penguins than the Sharks have been. And so far, I would agree with that. So we will see what the Pens can do.
I think it's going to be 6.
Yeah, you think it's going to be 6?
The only reason why I think it's going to be 6 is because, heaven forbid, they win at home.
They've never done that. They've won conferences at home, but they have not won the Cup at home. In fact, a Pittsburgh team has not won a championship at home since 1960 when Bill Mazeroski hit the walk-off homer. Now, a big asterisk next to that, they don't play the Super Bowl in home stadiums.
Yes.
So the Steelers have 6 of those, and you don't play those in Pittsburgh. Well, there might be a Super Bowl actually at Heinz Field at some point, but
that's a contentious topic
sore
for me.
Subject for you. Yes, we have discussed this before, but so you have the hockey, and then you even look outside Pittsburgh sports, Muhammad Ali and his death, and I think it touched many people. You and I probably don't remember very much about his competitive career just because of our age. My first memory of him is lighting the torch in Atlanta in '96, and his hand is shaking from the Parkinson's disease. And I remember asking my mom and dad, well, why is his hand shaking? And so, they explained that. He was diagnosed in '84, so he lived 32 years with the disease afterward. But he has been returned. His body has been returned to his native Louisville, and there will be a public ceremony coming up this week, and people will have a chance to go pay their respects to the man formerly known as Cassius Clay, and then he converted to Islam, became Muhammad Ali as we all know him. And I don't know about you, Brian, but it seems like for me the boxing was secondary to the impact on the culture.
I agree, and one thing I find interesting is everybody now is talking about how we don't have any athletes like him. We don't have athletes who are pushing some sort of an issue. And it's interesting because everyone says that and everyone's complimentary of him now in hindsight, but the moment somebody in stardom at any level, whether it's a movie actor or it's an athlete, says anything outside of their bubble of occupation, everybody jumps down their throats and says, oh, we don't care about your opinions, just play the game or just act on TV. So I find it interesting that now in his death, Muhammad Ali, everybody is praising him for being such a social warrior, but and anybody who tries to do that nowadays, who's current, they jump down their throat and pretty much tell them to shut up. And I just think that's interesting that there's this hypocrisy in the way that we're treating him versus some of these other athletes, and I think people are right to praise him because I think he used his opportunities to voice his opinion, something he felt passionate about, but why is it not okay for athletes of today's world to do that?
I think we tend to segregate people into bubbles and how we perceive them, and it is a paradox because I think sports can be a great avenue to affect social change. As we've seen over the years, sports can help make things that weren't previously seen as normal to fit into the culture and to join the mainstream, whether you're talking about like Jackie Robinson and his impact,
First thing that came to my mind.
You go back to the Battle of the Sexes, or Bobby Riggs against Billie Jean King at the Astrodome for gender equality, or you talk about Michael Sam for homosexual equality. So sports can deliver that. I think it's almost like it can sneak in behind our defenses, and we all can relate to watching athletes perform. It's like appreciating great art in a lot of ways. It can touch people across political boundaries, across ideological boundaries, but also at the same time, we do tend to rebel. And you're right, we have glossed over how controversial a figure that Muhammad Ali is and was back then. Of course, we weren't around for it, but
sure.
Can you imagine an athlete today, say if there was still a draft or someone speaking out against our military activities overseas, anytime anyone does that?
Well, look at Beyonce,
right?
With the police.
That's maybe a better parallel for today. LeBron James put on the shirt that said "I can't breathe." In honor of the gentleman who passed away in New York because of police brutality, and that was a big deal. And he didn't even really say anything; he was just wearing a shirt. So, in a lot of ways, I think it's a tougher culture these days to have that crossover.
You can't say anything without people jumping down your throat. And like I said, it's shut up if you're new, but if you've been around for some reason, in hindsight, we're willing to we're comfortable and willing to idolize people almost. But in today's, if you're current, you're new, and you're trying to use your opportunities to better the world, we want you to shut up and go into a bubble when you're not on your court or on the stage or doing whatever.
Yeah, and I get that too, as well as a sports reporter. Whenever I talk about anything outside of sports, occasionally I'll get the hashtag on Twitter, stick to sports. And for me, I'm a full human being. I'm not just I am obsessed with sports, obviously, or I wouldn't be in this, but I live in this world, and I have other interests, and I think it's irresponsible to just live in a sports bubble. You have to look at the full picture.
It's also boring to a point. I mean,
it is, yeah.
Sports is very interesting, but to me, sports is more interesting when you look at the societal effects that sports have
full context
on our world, and to me, that's much more interesting. I'm much more interested in the domestic abuse situation that goes on in the NFL than the X's and O's on the field, because that does affect our world. And whether you look at the youth of today and people say, oh, you shouldn't, your kids shouldn't use these athletes as a role model. Well, you don't get to choose who your kids' role models are. So
True.
It does affect our society in many ways. And kids see these guys getting away with things, and they think that they can too.
Well, you know me, I'm a big picture guy. You've engineered my shows here, and I like to discuss that, but I also like the details too. So
exactly, yes,
it's good to have a mix. I think, yeah,
Absolutely.
right. You mix perspectives, and I think you get a greater understanding of what's going on, and you can appreciate what effect that athletes and their example can have on society. But at any rate, down at PNC Park, it's also going to be a fun week in at least one way, as Neil Walker returns for the first time as a visitor. In fact, he'll address the media at in the press conference room at PNC Park. That's a rare type of an accommodation for a visiting player. Doesn't really happen, but Neil's a different type of guy, hometown player, and traded in the offseason, somewhat controversially, for John Neese, who will pitch against his old team tonight against Steven Matz. So if you're looking for a quick referendum on that trade, if you're that type of knee-jerk person, you might enjoy reacting to that. I'm just interested to see how the Pirates stack up against the defending league champs. And I think the Pirates could be in some trouble right now. They've lost 7 of 9. They drop a series to a losing team in the Angels over the weekend. the pitching is just it's got leaks all over the place. It's tough to figure out which one you should plug because you have Tony Watson struggling to hold leads recently, but the rotation. Look at what the Pirates are going to have this week. You have John Neese, average at best. Juan Nicasio, probably a bullpen guy, stretched out, and Francisco Liriano, who is a complete mess right now, going up against three young studs in Steven Matz, Jacob deGrom, and Noah Syndergaard. So the Pirates, I think, are going to be hard-pressed to win a game in this series, and they really need to because the Mets are their prime competition right now for that top wildcard spot.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. So anything else? Riverhounds, what they just had a game?
The Riverhounds had an up-and-down week as they welcomed Rob Vincent, who moved on to D.C. United, as some local soccer fans may know, of the MLS. He got a position with them, won a position with them through trial this offseason, so full credit to him. But he came back on loan, scored a goal from long range. It was a proper send-off for Robbie, the man from Liverpool, England, wearing number 66. I don't know if that was a hockey tribute or a guy who doesn't have his old number anymore. Someone else took 6, so he just doubled up, I guess. But the Hounds still couldn't pull out the win. They had some defensive lapses. That's been a hallmark of this season. They get good pressure, but a little leaky on the back end. Speaking of leaks with the Pirates, it's been a similar case over at Highmark. But they do get back a real foundational player over the past couple of years. Danny Earls, their holding midfielder, who anchored that defensive side for them, has been re-signed. They're hoping they can get him back with the club for a trip to Richmond, always a tough place to win. The Hounds have just one win in their first 10 matches, 1-6-3. With 2/3 of the season left to go, plenty of time for the new coach, Dave Brandt, to turn it around, but they are, I believe, 10 points at least out of the playoff zone. So a winning streak is needed, and when you go on the road in the sport of soccer, that's tough to do. I think a draw would be a nice result for them. If they can get Danny Earls back, that might help them as well shore up some things that have been lacking this year. All
right, that's Matt Gajtka. You can hear him Friday mornings, 7 a.m. at riversedgepgh.com, and you can read him on DK at Pittsburgh Sports. His Twitter is at Matt Gajtka.
Can you spell it?
I will try. MATTGAJTKA.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
GAJTKA. I'm sticking with it. I'm not going to change it.
That's right.
No compromise. Keeping that ridiculous Polish name.
You know what? It works. You know what? It's nice because you could just put your name out there. You don't have to worry about underscores or
it's true.
anything
Someone
else.
like you, I think, would probably. Crawford's a fairly common name.
Yes,
so.
and Brian's a very common name as well. So
you can't just be Brian Crawford online.
No. I am at RiverTalkPGH. Tweet me and let me know your most awkward and interesting pooping incident. Well, if we get any tweets, we'll read them on air. That's Matt Gajtka. I'm Brian Crawford. You're listening to the Rivers Edge Radio Network, Pittsburgh's voice for local music.